Welcome, men. I'm Todd with Empowered Men Coaching, and today I have Sonyan White here with us. We're going to be talking about divorce. Obviously, it is a difficult subject. It's a difficult process, and Sonyan is an expert coach in a tool that you can bring to the divorce process to help navigate it successfully with more peace, more wholeness, and wellness throughout that landscape. So Sonyan, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Todd. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. So you and I have spoken before, and you introduced me to this concept of conscious uncoupling and this process that couples or individuals in a relationship can use to help them proceed through divorce in a more healthy way. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It's a 5-step process, and it is all about using the situation in your life, this divorce, this breakup, as a way of transforming and empowering yourself, both to the benefit of yourself and to your family now and also in the future, because many times when you're divorcing, you're just focused on the next year maybe, but if you've got a family, then next year isn't enough to consider. We need to be able to think about forever, because you're always going to be a parent, you're always going to be a father, possibly later on in life a grandfather. So ensuring that you protect those relationships and making sure that you have enough influence in those relationships so that whatever is important to you and your values actually gets shared in a resourceful and useful and meaningful way in the future to your children, is something I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I believe you. And that's such an important point that you bring up. I mean, the divorce can take 6 months, a year, 18 months, whatever it takes, but it's not a one and done deal as far as the emotional landscape and the communication landscape that will actually occur for years if there are small children involved, just as a result of the kids keeping the two people involved in conversation throughout a period of their lives.
And for me, two people may choose to uncouple, to end a relationship, and whether they do that with any grace or not is obviously what I work with. But the children didn't choose it, and to hold that in your mind, that your choices and your decisions could possibly negatively impact on the well-being of your children, the sense of safety of your children, and their ability to trust themselves, to trust in love, and to live a life that is happy and free from stress or free from the pull. Am I siding with my mother? Am I siding with my father? How is this going to impact my mother? What would my father say? We're asking children sometimes to think in ways that are beyond their capacities to think about, and quite honestly are beyond the capacities of adults to think about, Todd.
Okay. Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to just say about that, whether you've got children or not, you are in relationships. And chances are that whatever it is that caused the ending of this relationship is somewhere in all of your other relationships. So wouldn't it be fantastic if you could figure out some of what's going on there? So some of the ways that you behave, some of the actions, the words that you took, or the beliefs that you had, and start to challenge those and change them and transform them. And then all relationships are going to be deeper, more meaningful, more authentic, more empowering.
That is a real possibility or a real scenario. I mean, people who leave one relationship and then enter into a second relationship, I've read statistics just recently, 40 to 50% of marriages in the US end in divorce, and that statistic is even higher in the second marriages. So
Can
to
go up to
me,
70 or 80.
yeah, and so to me that clearly speaks to, I brought my particular baggage with me that I was part of in this relationship to the new one, and it contributed in some way to create that second divorce. So, so what I'm hearing you say is this particular process of conscious uncoupling would help me to understand myself in a deeper, more meaningful way, to change potential actions or behaviors or understand them, so then potentially I get different reactions in the next relationship. Is that right?
Absolutely, you've got it. It's all about using this situation. First of all, going back to the divorce itself. If there is a way that we can use as much generosity, as much respect and dignity. Remember, the person that you're divorcing was the center of your life when you chose to either marry them or commit to them in some way. They were the love of your life. Sometimes even you'll say they were your soulmate. Now, soulmate is soul hate. And there's a lot of reasons why that happens, and a lot of them can even be hormonal reasons. But the point to remember is at one point, this person was not that. And if we can tap into just a little bit of that, it's going to mean that our levels of maturity and dignity during a divorce are going to go a little bit better. I'm not going to say it's perfect. No one really has that in a divorce. However, from a selfish perspective, the better this divorce goes, the cheaper it's going to be if you're using legal advice and other sort of therapy, anything else, the cheaper it's going to be to do it, which means that the pot of money available for the two of you and your family, if you have one post-divorce, will be larger. If you go through the process and you do it this way, you will also have enough generosity in the bank account of the other person's heart, so that when you need to be more flexible later on, maybe you need to be more flexible on childcare, or one of you needs a bit of help more with the money side of things, because life changes, just as we know now. None of us are working quite the way we were. Nobody planned for that. If you can still negotiate respectful communication, you can get through these for the sake of your children. And having that perspective of sometimes, how can I be even more generous? So I'm going to challenge you there, Todd. How can I give even more in this divorce? Because I'm telling you, you can think, oh, I'm giving too much on the house, or I'm giving too much of the. You are not. What you get back in return is way, way more. And I've seen this with my clients that I've worked with, but also I've heard about it from all my other conscious uncoupling coach community, that actually it's something that pays you forward. And in the end, when you look back at this, the hatred disappears, the painful emotions, all of that, if you work through it properly, will diminish. And then you're left with, I did the best I could in that relationship.
Yeah.
And you can walk forward without regret either. And being a role model for your children. And fathers, as role models, please don't underestimate how important it is. It's not just about earning money. It's about showing up for your sons, showing up for your daughters in a consistent way, so that they can rely on you from now, if they're young, and even later on in life. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about fathering.
Yeah. I want to address what you just spoke to, though, because what I was hearing was, if I can work on myself through this process, if I can get myself in alignment and I'm congruent with who I am and what I'm about, and my contribution to whatever created this divorce scenario in the first place, it sounds like I can then respond in really strong and healthy ways to whatever situations come up in the future, which would benefit my kids in the scenario of the divorce, or my ex in the scenario of the divorce. Just generally, just I'm feeling like a better human being, or being able to show up as a better human being in a difficult and touchy situation.
Families, you've got that spot on. And families are changing with divorce rates as high as you were just discussing, and there's no denying the numbers. It also means that family structures are changing. We're living with blended families, with more complex family systems. And again, there's no template on navigating those. It then comes down to whoever are the leaders in a family system, having a value system that's going to filter through. We still value, mum and dad may choose not to live together. Mum and dad may now have different partners, and we love you, and you are important, and we come together for you and what you need. And this is what we stand for. We stand for kindness. We stand for honesty. Whatever your value system is, even if you've not been operating on it, you can then start to choose to operate on a value system and make amends if that's needed. That's one step in the process, but it's becoming the human the potential of that when you're freed. Because you know this, if you believe you're a failure, if you believe you're unworthy, you will naturally behave in ways and seek attention and engage in activities that are related to this whole sort of structure of a belief. But that's not who you are. That belief is merely some sort of programming that got put into your head at a very early age, and you have reinforced it up until now, but you can choose to change that belief. You can choose to alter that belief, because that's the one capacity about humans, Todd. We're not like dogs or cats. We can change, and we can change now. You don't need permission. You don't need to have read 1,000 books. You can just choose to change and then go that way. And that's just a wonderful gift.
Yeah, that's very empowering. It's very freeing. It's so much the opposite of victim. What, when we step into that.
Absolutely. And I think I see so many more women. And so to share some of their perspectives, so much hurt. A lot of the time there are betrayals. A lot of the time there are secrets that were kept. A lot of the time funds are hidden. And all of these things, I'm not saying that all men do this, but plenty of men suddenly behave in rather peculiar ways when a divorce is happening. None of this is constructive. If you've got a mother who's having to relocate with the children, find work, establish herself in a new community, do all of the things that she has not traditionally done within that marriage, and look after children, is it any wonder that the children suffer? So sometimes there has to be a realistic looking at this situation, and it's a sad thing when that happens, and there can be so many reasons. I know I'm not here to blame the men and say this is what you all do. I'm not saying that. It's just, can we put aside all of this to actually come in and take care of ourselves, because we're also hurting, and all of us in a divorce are hurting. And can we put our energy at the moment for ourselves and on our children and the community, because all families become a part of a community. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Let me ask you a question. Is this a process? Is conscious uncoupling a process where both parties involved in the divorce, the husband, the wife, or whatever, show up and work through this together in the coaching
Typically,
process?
no. Conscious uncoupling was designed for one person who is going through a breakup, who chooses to engage in the 5-step process. If you actually had two, there'd be two coaches, and the coaches would liaise. But it's not designed for both of you. You can share it, and it's all a bit awkward when you do it that way, because the truth is, you only need one leader. You only need one person who's prepared to go through the conscious uncoupling process and do the work. Because you and I, we could argue, but if I choose not to rise to anything that you say to me, eventually you're going to give up.
Right, right.
You know, and it takes a lot of strength to do that, but it's very difficult to get both people to engage in something at this time when they don't like each other.
Yeah.
So let one adult go through the process is the logic
Okay.
with conscious uncoupling.
Okay, great. Got it. All right. Well, let's jump into conscious uncoupling. Can you share? So, you know, I'm a man, I'm in a divorce situation, and I'm trying to keep my crap together and figure out what's going on. And so I come to you, and what happens next? What do we do?
Right. Well, the 5-step process. The first step is almost triage, really, and it's where are you? Where are you? What's going on? What do we need to do? How do we get your physical situation right? What's going on with your finances? It's a practical situation, but we're basically looking at safety, and we're looking at dealing with very, very powerful emotions that can be running through us at this time. They can be rage, finally, all of that frustration and bitterness that that has been repressed for years. Boom, it can explode, and when it explodes, it can be very, very uncontrolled and possibly destructive. The idea is to take all of these power, the grief, the loss, the sadness, the everything, the brokenheartedness, and transform that into the positive energies that are needed so that we can go through the process. We start to learn how to harness the mind, begin to understand the mind, and how to harness the thinking, the ruminating, the self-justification, all of those things that we go on and spin crazy all day long.
Yeah.
Or if we're not connected to any of that, we're going to ask you, how come you're not connected to any of that? And so that's the step one. The step two, reclaim your power in your life, is when you start to take responsibility for your part in this process. And it doesn't matter who did what or whom. It doesn't matter. We just need 0.01% that's your responsibility. You know what? All of my life, all of my married life, I never spoke up.
Yeah.
All of my married life, I kept on this little lie, which became something else. All of my life, I didn't do the thing that I actually truly wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
And now I can't do it. I can't be this way anymore.
Right.
That 0.1%, that's what we can work with, because that's yours. And what is yours is in your sphere of control and agency and capacity to change. You can't change her. If you could, you might not be divorcing. But,
Right.
you know, chances are you can't do anything to persuade someone else at this particular point if you've got to this stage. So with that, you begin to start to chip away at figuring out what it is I need to do, what it is I can change so that this doesn't have to happen to me again. Okay?
Yeah. Wait, let me jump
Yeah. Please go ahead.
So what the process looks like from where I'm sitting and listening to you is, first, I need to get myself clear of the energy that I'm carrying that may be blocking my ability to see, to think rationally, to make good decisions. And that's all about me, right? I'm the guy that's coming into you and I'm carrying this stuff and I'm choosing to carry it or I'm choosing to hold on to it or whatever the deal is, but I've got it. You're going to help me release it, channel it into a different direction, allow me to see things in a way that I can then respond, not react. I can then choose, not feel put upon. And then I love this part about contribution or about my part in it, because what I'm feeling is that contribution is the thing that if I don't really look at and work out, that's the piece I'm going to be taking to the next relationship. And like you said, if it's one where, I didn't speak up or no one spoke up, that was the issue. What would change in the second relationship and potentially just a repeat
It's a time
of the
bomb.
first one? Yeah.
It's a time bomb. Eventually, the romance will, the excitement will disappear. The honeymoon stage is over, and you go, "Oh, here I am again."
Yeah.
That is just soul destroying, isn't it? I mean, we want to make mistakes, but there are certain mistakes in my life anyway I'm choosing not to make again. Not in a, like, I'm going to stay in a little safe place and never walk out of it. I mean, I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow and I'm going to own and I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to move forward with a new set of skills. And before we go anywhere with that, it's not a failure in you. I was not taught that a woman had a voice, for instance. So it's not my fault that I wasn't taught that. But it was a belief I internalized and took with me until somebody pointed this out. Once it's been pointed out to you, that thing there, that way you have of avoiding all confrontation. And you think that that's mature and that's keeping the peace, for instance. There you see, now, can you see how that separates people? Just as a very, very quick. And so you get to explore. But these beliefs are given to you from the caregivers, from the people who are there in your early life, and with a brain that was in its naturally egocentric stage of development, which is up to 13, where you are the center. If mom and dad are fighting, it must be my fault.
Yeah.
And that's how children think, and that's how children believe. So if mom and dad don't engage with me or ignore me or don't think my grades are, it's my fault. It's not.
Yeah.
And learning to grieve over that. Sometimes, you realize, wow, I didn't have a great childhood, really. And there's a grief process associated with that. It's not your fault necessarily, but it's a behavior pattern that you don't even challenge. And at the beginning, you have drawn these people into your life because they match that challenge. But eventually it's, there's a repulsion. The initial attraction wears away, and that thing that you found was so great about the person just really, really irritates the heck out of you and causes all of the problems. So it's not a question of blame. It's about owning, wow, that is what I do.
Yeah.
And holding that in as kind and loving a way as possible, so that, because breaking down into guilt or shame or anything else, there's no energy with that. There's no way forward to go with that. So it's own it, make amends, choose not to do that going forward. And that may mean you have to start to develop a new skill set. For instance, communication. But there's no point becoming an expert in nonviolent communication or anything if you haven't gone and looked at why. Because this, when you're triggered, you can forget about it all very easily. But if you've changed your belief, everything changes.
That's exactly right. It's at the root of the belief, the false belief, the misbelief, that gets changed. And once that happens, then we are able to see the new possibilities for ourselves and how we
Absolutely. I mean, that's when people say, oh, I suddenly noticed this, and because your mind is now open to all these other doors that are open, whereas you're
Yeah.
always looking at that locked door behind you. So the third step, break your habit, heal your heart, is now let's look at some of these. We all have our cocktail of our, I'm not worthy, I'm a failure, I must be a man, I have to be strong, but I am weak. I'm not heard, I'm not seen, I'm not valuable, whatever they all are. We start to actually find out which ones are there and start to work even more deeply with these beliefs. And also this is in the real world, because of course we're doing this in our heart and we're doing this in our mind, but we need to also bring it out into the world. So a person, let me go back to the example of a person who speaks up is someone who can say no.
Right.
A person who speaks up is a person who has a vocabulary that doesn't suit me right now, and I'm helpful. I'm here for you later on. You can learn all these strategies, but if it comes from within you, then this is just a skill set that you develop, just as you did at school. If you did maths, we have to learn how to differentiate, and you learn it, and that's that. You just learn a new skill set. You learn to listen.
It takes practice.
It takes practice and practice.
Right.
But sometimes you don't even know. Sometimes people think they're listening, but actually they're judging and setting up all of their little chess pieces ready for their attack move, and they're not listening.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they think that everything that's coming at them is an attack, and it's not.
Yeah.
And
so you help people through that process, through that piece, right? I mean, like, they can bring examples to you during the coaching.
Absolutely.
And it's like, and then you help them see, understand, and.
So when they come and they're within a week, whatever they're bringing to me, this is the art of it actually, is that is then taken and woven into the structure in an essence of that week. So that, because it doesn't mean that we're not looking at what they're bringing and what they're doing, but it's woven into it, and it works. It works really, really well.
Okay.
And then we go into the fourth step, which is, how do we close this relationship with the same dignity as when we entered it? You marry, you wear your suit, and you stand in front of your family. I don't know about you, but in the I received my divorce by email. It was like the most shocking email ever. My final divorce. Oh, wow. So that is the underlying dot of a 25-year. It was just, whoa. And it doesn't mean there's opportunities to go into some sorts of closing ceremonies, but it's also about the contracts that people make that are the non-verbal contracts, like, you're going to be financially responsible for me, you're going to be the one that protects me, you're going to be my love forever, and there's no one else going to possible for me, you are the one that will provide all of the love in this relationship. So many unspoken contracts, and they can keep you stuck. And so we have a soul-to-soul communication. It's amazing what comes up in that, where you start to close down. I'm going to release you from this pressure of being my financial support within reasons of law. If there are children, right. I mean, I'm going to release you from being responsible for all of this, and small things like fixing my car, but also, larger emotional, because that's what you brought in. You marry, he's going to be my prince, he's going to save me, and she's my princess, and she's just going to get me completely, and I don't even have to speak, and she's going to understand me, or anything like that. And so we get to close those, and sometimes they come back and haunt you a little bit later, actually, because you realize, oh wow, I had an agreement and I didn't realize. But if you can close those off, if you can we do it in our mind, because sometimes it's not possible for two people to go through an uncoupling ceremony, but we can do it with your soul connecting to your soul, and we just, with dignity,
Okay.
we separate. We've ended this soul contract. We now move into another one where we continue to take care of our children, and we are separate beings. We are no longer enmeshed in each other,
Yeah.
and our job is to gently take away all of those unmeshings, those codependents, all of those kinds of behaviors. It's really quite liberating. And then the fifth step is create your happily even after, where obviously we're looking at your future. What needs to happen? What do you want for that future? We set an intention at the beginning of conscious uncoupling in step 1 for the divorce.
Okay.
I will bring myself through this process and my children so that they come through this safe, healthy, happy. And I will always be, that's not in alignment with your intention. That's not in alignment. You're saying this, but that's not in alignment. But at the end, what's the future for you?
Yeah.
Who are you going to be now, moving forward? And then what steps need to happen to set that up with women, especially. Sometimes it's going back to work. With many, it's actually the dreams. I gave up art because I had the kids and because life got in the way, and but now I'm going to actually bring that back into my life. I didn't have many female friends or same-sex friends, and now I'm going to build up a whole new community around me. I have always wanted to contribute, and now I'm going to go ahead and figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And they do it. Absolutely.
And what you just said about creating a future and things that you give up, I resonate with that. As men in a relationship, there are things we give up as well. Yeah. And I've talked to friends of mine, clients of mine who have gone through this process, and there seems to always be something. Well, now I'm going to go back to this. Now I'm going to go back to that. And what strikes me is somewhere along the way in the relationship, the person chose to give that up. Maybe it was requested of them or demanded of them, or it was an unspoken thing. But ultimately, I am responsible for what I give up. And that may be something that I shouldn't have given up. That may have been part of my contribution that creates the anger or the anxiety or the displeasure or whatever about the relationship for me, because I chose to do something, but yet I'm not speaking to it or getting it back or whatever. So
I think your point there, it was unspoken.
Yeah.
If it is truly negotiated, you know what, just for this 5 years, let's we've only got this pot of money, we can do this, we can do that, we can't have the you make these negotiations. If you do it together, then you're a rope, many strands of a rope. If you don't, then there's a result. Well, I gave up this for you, I did that for you, and then suddenly that becomes something you're going to beat the other partner with a stick for. But quite honestly, both of you, it's a both and situation there, because crushing somebody else's dream is not something that I would want to do, not permanently. Life can be such that we have to put certain things on hold, but honoring that and going, I've got you, I hear you, this is important, and we're going to work towards getting it. That is a deep connection, and you don't mind doing that. And learning to speak up and say, this is really hard for me to give up. And I'm not talking about addictions or unhealthy things, but just the desire to be alone. It's really important that I get some of this time where I spend all day either on a golf course or I'm fishing, or I'm sorry if I'm sounding stereotypical, but you know, men tend to go off and do things like that. And respecting that's part of the nourishment of the soul of him, and understanding that that's not taking away from you.
Right.
It's understanding there's a push-pull going on there. When you begin to actually relate to what it was for the other person, it becomes less of a battle that has to be won, or a power struggle that has to be where one is dominant and the other is not. It's just, I don't understand men, and men sometimes don't understand women. And I hate to sound, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, but you know, there are certain differences in the way brains in men and hearts in men and brains in women and hearts in women operate. And understanding that and going, yeah, in future, I'm going to make sure that I've carved out what I need. And then I promise I'm available.
Right.
For the relationship, and I can participate free from any resentments or what's the negotiation.
Right.
What is it? And you do that when the conversation is a whisper.
Yeah.
This is a challenge. This is something we need to talk about. Not, you know, coming in with the big guns and the priest and two of your best friends. and you know, we need to talk. We all get a little bit of a palpitation when someone says that. But when the yelling comes, when when it's beyond a connecting conversation. Even in a connecting conversation, you could swear, you could forget to use I statements, you can do it wrong, but if you're connecting, it doesn't matter because they get it.
Yeah, good point. So this process, how long does it take? Is there a standard? How varied is it? I mean, how does it work?
The way I coach is online, weekly usually, and there's a 10-week package. And so basically we take 2 weeks with each step of the process, and that works. And then very often it's continuing work, and then it's bringing in the whole of it. Remember, this is going back to step 3. Remember that. Let's, you know, because this is an evolution. This is a transformation. So it will create change if you work it. It will be a transforming experience, and you will get through the logistics of a divorce. But I mean, divorces don't usually happen in 10 weeks. So you know, but it can be an ongoing. But for sure, it's valuable because it's just started the process off. And so that's really what happens. It can be 10 weeks and off you go. You feel great, that's wonderful. Or there's a continuation with it, and we go deeper and deeper as much as is needed.
What difference, let me ask you a question, Sonia. What difference have you seen with a person who comes to you in this coaching early in the divorce process versus maybe at the end of the divorce process? I mean, I imagine it works in either scenario because of the subject matter you're dealing with. Do you see differences, or I'm just curious?
There's differences in terms of negotiations, child arrangements. Some of those can be already set in stone. In terms of the trauma, in terms of the heartache, not much. Yeah. When someone immediately he's just left the house, then we're dealing with shock.
Okay.
And as well, whereas a little bit later on in the process, there's, you know, they may have begun to process, but we don't know. A lot of the time, people just swallow that down. I'm going to deal with it later. I need to do this. I need to keep control. Yeah. So they haven't really dealt with anything. It also works for people who are just thinking about it. Again, if you're thinking about ending a relationship, then for me, I just say, then let's just put a hold on the idea that there's going to be an end until you finish the process. Because then when you realize, well, actually, I'm this bag of beliefs. You may realize, I don't need to divorce this person. I just need to work, and we can retrieve something. And that's fantastic. And I also work with people, they could have been divorced years.
Okay.
Seriously. But they can't go to their son's wedding because he will be there.
Shows up again, different things.
Because they get triggered, because they haven't dealt with, he divorced, he took all the money, or whatever the story is. Your life is stuck.
Yeah. Okay.
You have no joy and happiness. So there's no stage where it's not useful, really, because this is, in some ways, it's about the transformation. And the divorce is the catalyst. It's just, well, we've got to deal with this scenario. And we've now really highlighted what needs to be dealt with. But nobody has just one belief that's hampering them. There's a cocktail of them.
Sure.
So there's a lot. But having said that, beginning, it's just fantastic. And I see these transformations. They're exponential with the transformation, the growth that they have done from the person who couldn't even pick up a phone to the person who can now walk into a courtroom with all of their legals in place, set up, and ready to fight. Or the person who is so angry, to the person who's learning how to handle that anger and that rage and express themselves in ways that will actually get them what they want. And keep them, understanding about relationship. I cannot think, if you don't do the work, well, to be honest, if that is what happens, and it doesn't often happen because I can tell, I give the money back. I couldn't, in all honesty, work with someone when I know too many yes buts, too many, I understand meditation would be good for me, but I can't do it.
Yeah. Well, that's like anything. If we do not put in the work, we are not going to see the results. There's no other way around it. You either work and you go through, or you don't, and you just stay where you are and you just circle that tree until you're ready to work.
Unless you're Eckhart Tolle, who just boom.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Okay. But, with the rest of us, we have
not.
Exactly, Todd. Neither am I. Anything I have learned has been hard-earned, and it's a deep practice. And I think that that's something that is so important. If we took our relationships practices, then we would, I think, treat them as a much more sacred thing. And practices require time, awareness, effort, sacrifice sometimes. There's not every day do you want to get up and do your meditation. You do it anyway.
Right.
And then can you measure it immediately? One day you can. But the other thing about having somebody on your side is that you can vent. If it was you and I, you could vent whatever you wanted with me. Thank goodness, because you're not going to do it to her, and you're not going to do it in a courtroom.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And having somebody who you can trust, who can say, I hear you when you say that, but can you see? Because I will always throw it back if someone's giving me, I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And actually, even though we're across a screen, I'm feeling threatened by that. And if I, who am grounded, are feeling that way, how do you think the rest of the world is around you?
Right. So
you challenge.
Yeah. And
you have
that's
to.
So important.
There's a challenge, and this is not just men, by the way. There are plenty of women who
for sure.
And this is when you get that they don't show up.
Yeah.
They don't show up in coaching. You sure could. They don't show up in other areas of their lives.
Right.
You know, so none of it's bad. It's all information. It's just, and that's the wonderful of being in a coaching program, because you've got the time to be you. That's what I want. I want you to show up.
Right.
Then we can work with something. But I don't know how in your working, how does it go?
Well, it's the same way. I challenge people's bullshit, right? I mean, it's basically the way it is. It's like people have challenged mine, and that's how I grow. That's how I learn, and that's a coach's job too, is to challenge and to challenge the beliefs. Where does it come from? Why do you believe that? What makes you think that's true? So, Sonyan, how can someone get a hold of you to participate in this process of conscious uncoupling?
You can find me online. I'm at Sonyan White Coaching .com, and you can just go there, where you can find me on my contact page, and I will connect with you. I nearly always reply within 24 hours, but that is time zone related, by the way. And that's a good way to start. I have plenty of information for parents, for anyone who is on the site there. And I love to connect with anyone who wants to have a chat about that. Go and schedule a session with me, and we can have a talk. And that is not a sell. I love to coach, but I don't want to compel anyone into coaching. It doesn't feel honorable. It doesn't fit with who I am as a human being to want to force someone, you need a coach and all of that. I do believe everybody needs a coach, but it's come and talk. I'll see if I can do something with what's going on in your situation to help. If you want coaching, we can discuss that. But it's not about me selling something to you, because it doesn't feel good for me. And so that's their offer, just so that you can, don't worry. I'm not trying.
It's a stress-free. It's a stress-free.
It is a
invitation.
truly icky-free experience where, because it's at the back of my mind as well. If I'm thinking about that, I just want to connect with this person in front of me, see what their situation is, see if they're a match, because not everyone is a match for this kind of work. You've got to be prepared to look at yourself.
Perfect. So you did mention on your website that you have quite a bit of information, and you also have some information as a gift.
Yes, I do.
Who are listening to this. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I created Eyes Wide Open Insights. It's a PDF which you can share with your people, and basically it's a reminder of the things that we must remember when we're dealing with our children, and by children from any age. You have to take in the cognitive development of the children, but still, it doesn't matter even if they're 17. They're still a child. 25, they're still a child. And it's what you're learning. It's about how you're going to speak. Don't use the child for your happiness. Don't substitute them for the lack of a partner in your life. Don't bring them into this thing where they're having to choose sides. And it sounds really, really obvious. And when we're all calm and when we're all sane, it is really obvious. But I just printed it because I kept saying the same thing again and again. So I printed it, and you guys are more than welcome to have it and to keep that. I also have some articles on site which I'd love to. I can send you links that if you'd like to share.
We'll provide
about bad mouthing, which is something that I think happens a lot, where one party rolls their eyes when the name of the other person's mentioned. So even their body language is showing to their children a lack of safety. Because if, oh, there's daddy, he's late again. Or, what did daddy say to you when you were at his house? All of these kinds of things, and this negative, you can there are signs that this is happening, that your child is being told lots and lots of things about you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so distressing, because suddenly fathers can find that they're an angry child. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I know everything.
Yeah.
And they haven't heard the complete story. And so then there are ways for you to actually start to manage it. But what I do want to say is, take it seriously. This is not, and in Conscious Uncoupling, I'm always saying, what is the high road here? This is not a high road. If you have any kind of suspicion that bad mouthing is going on, you need to deal with it very, very quickly, because it will fester and it will grow, and you can end up with sometimes irretrievable relationships, which is just sad for everyone.
Sure. All right. Well, I will provide that link for the listeners.
And so if you go to my site, look at the blog under parents, you'll find a whole series of these. Okay. And these are the kinds of things that we'd look at in Conscious Uncoupling, you know, because it's such a huge, huge destructive thing, the words that come out of our mouth.
Sure. And again, the importance of being self-aware and making intentional choices that are healthy and productive in how we do things.
And showing to your children that even if you're not married to this person or connected in some way with this, with their mother, mm-hmm. that you show respect.
Yeah.
You know, that if you're still doing things like, it's Mother's Day, here's a rose, or you can give the rose to your child to give. Right. If you're honoring and saying, you are the mother of my children and I appreciate everything you do, this is again that building of a generosity. It's a different relationship. You're no longer together.
Right.
But the more you can respect that relationship, the safer your children will feel.
Right. And that's very important. Sonia, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So much information in such little time. So thank you.
I'm so grateful. I just wish more men would go through and have coaching. But I know you do great work, and I have such a deep respect for that. I don't think I'm talking anything that you don't already know deeply in your own cell structure. So it's an honor. It's an honor to talk with you. And
thank you again.
Via you meet your people.
All right. Very good. And so for those listening, the links to Sonyan's website are below. The PDF that she's offered as a valuable gift and tool to use is available as well. So until next time, Sonyan, thank you very much.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye.